Hello, welcome to Fabric Time. Here we are at Four Pines Quilting. Like I said, we're running a little late tonight. Actually, according to my clock, we're right on time, 8:05 p.m. I did change the time to 8:05 because we're a little bit behind because, as you can see, our studio set has changed. You are actually behind the curtain in the quilting room, the Bat Cave. This is where all the magic happens. It's not nearly as glamorous, as nice as the front end of the store. We have all the pretty fabric. Well, I guess you can't see the concrete wall over there, but it's not painted and it's not very glamorous. But it's where we're at because we're going to talk about some fun stuff tonight. And what we're going to talk about? Oh, we're going to talk about quilts and quilting machines and long arm quilting because in the last 2 or 3 weeks we have done. Oh gosh, I've probably done close to 40 quilts, maybe. Yeah, in the last month we've just been pumping quilts out because we got this nice new machine. Oh, we're borrowing this machine. Thanks, Nick and Donna. It's been awesome. So we've been able to catch right up. But in so doing, we've run into some fun stuff, some interesting things. We're going to talk about prepping your quilt. Oh, I guess before we get started, we should start with like shop news stuff. I totally forgot about that. I'm totally flustered tonight because it was a little bit more work than I wanted. A little bit more work than anticipated getting set up in here because it's kind of a mess and whatnot. So, shop news. We're doing an apron class, which I should probably get the aprons. Previous Facebook, if you go to our Facebook page, you can see I posted a picture of a really cool apron that Kimberbell that they make out of tea towels. That is a class that we're going to be doing next Friday from 1 to like 4. It's a fantastic class. We just ran it today for the first time. A lot of fun. It's $59.95, but that's going to include your disc, all your materials. You just have to show up. You just come in. We have everything. It's just you come in and bam, you sit down and go. You don't have to bring anything in with you. It's a turnkey class. Just come in and enjoy yourself. So we have that going on next Friday. And then on the 21st, we have our annual Christmas party shop thing. I really don't have much of a plan yet, but it's happening Saturday, December 21st at 3 o'clock. So on Saturdays, we normally close at 3. So if you want to get here a little early, that's cool. But we're going to start our Christmas party at 3. Usually goes about an hour, hour and a half. We have refreshments. We talk and joke and have a fantastic time. And then we do a gift exchange. If you choose to come and want to participate in the exchange, bring a gift. It's usually a Yankee Swap style. And regifting is strongly encouraged. So if you have like that soap set that you got last year at a Christmas party, bring it in, rewrap it, and we'll give it away again this year. That adds to the fun because like stationery sets, candles, that kind of stuff that you always get, bring it in, rewrap it. Or like my grandmother used to do, like if you're walking through her house and you'd be like, oh, that's a really nice picture or whatever. She was like, oh, you like that? She'd take it off and give it to you. And she did that once, and it's like, oh, but I gave that to you for Christmas a couple years ago. So, but anyway, stuff like that. So when you're for our Christmas party, everybody's invited. And just like I said, if you want to participate in the gift exchange, just bring something to give, and if bring cookies and stuff too if you want. It's kind of a seat of the pants. We have a lot of fun. We do it every year. It used to be better planned when Becky was here because that's what Becky does, the momster. She takes care of us like that. But when I do it, we have a good time. So, that being said, and wow, we're famous today. We got 4 people watching us so far. So that's what's coming up. And then also in January, we do have the Kimberbell Tea Party, which is a 2-day event happening on the 28th and 29th, if I remember my dates correctly. And that is going to be a 2-day event. Check out our website. There's pictures. We should have samples. We're going to have samples probably to show for our next Fabric Time event. We'll probably have some samples and stuff so you can all see that and be excited about it. Sign up early. If you're interested, sign up as soon as you know you're going to come because that will fill up quick. So that's all we've got on the schedule for now. There's a couple other things we got in the works, but with Christmas coming up, I haven't had time to really sit down and get the January, February schedule put together, but we're working on it. Also, like as normal, check out our website and buy stuff from us because that's what we do here. That's why I do this stuff. Not that I don't enjoy doing this, but, I got to do marketing and, so go to our website, buy stuff if you're not local. All our fabric is $9.95 a yard or less, except for extra wides, and it's $5 shipping, flat rate shipping, unless it's over $100, then we ship it for free. Also, while we're sitting here talking, Okay, we're only 5 minutes into it. I'm sitting here rambling, as it were. Christmas quilting. If you still have a quilt that you need done for Christmas, we can get it in. We are caught right up at this point. Turnaround time is probably down to about 5 days. Everything that I've got on the shelf will probably be done by next Wednesday. So if you've got quilts that need to be done for Christmas, bring it in sooner than later because we've got room and I can get them done. So if you had that last minute Christmas quilt you're working on, bring it in. We can probably get it done for you. Last call for Christmas right now. It's tentatively set for December 17th. So you have a couple days still to get it in. I have to have it by the 17th if I'm going to guarantee to have it ready by the 24th because I'm not going to be here the 25th. So I'll have it ready for Christmas Eve the 24th if it's here by the 17th. That may change, but right now we're still looking good for the 17th. So those last minute people, last minute Larrys, I believe they call them. If you're one of those contemplators like myself, you still have time. Without further ado, hello, Jocelyn. It's nice to see you, that you're here joining us. And so, without further ado, let's get into what we want to talk about today. First thing I want to talk today, wanted to get into kind of basic long arm prep stuff because a lot of people just bring their quilts in and drop it off, and I wanted to show you the magic and explain and talk about some things that, as the quilter loading the quilt machine and stuff, that are to take into consideration so you can make it easier for your long arm quilter. Now, some of these things are probably specific to me because everybody does it a little bit differently. But most of it's going to be pretty universal across other quilters are going to be very, very similar. So if you have your own quilter that you always go to, some of this stuff may apply, but always ask them first because they might like to do things a little bit different. First thing I wanted to talk about was, before we even get into the long arm stuff, something I run across a lot, and I usually see it this time of year a little bit more because I'm seeing people that don't often bring their quilts in and aren't doing a lot of quilting, is wavy borders. And wavy borders is, I brought one of my own quilts to kind of demonstrate wavy borders. This is still a work in progress, and you can win all over it. I'm not going to make a pattern. I thought I was going to. I have all the stuff to make it. You can take a picture and make it yourself, but it's a whole other story. This will be finished at some point, but it's a good example of what we want to talk about with wavy borders. So what you've got, I'm going to now swap and hope it's supposed to. Oh, look at that. Camera angles. Woohoo! All right. This isn't going to be kind of an example of it, but what you'll run into when you're making a quilt. So we have our quilt here. So we have a quilt. This is the middle, and this is our outer border right here. What you're going to notice, this is a pieced border, and I specifically chose this quilt because it has a pieced border. And if you look at it, you can see, I don't know if you can see it. See how it stretches a little bit? You see how it's going to stretch at every seam? So the more pieces you have in your border, the more it's going to stretch. Now that stretch also goes for the center of your quilt. If you have stuff on point, which a little bit of stretch, you're going to get that through the middle of your quilt as well. The more seams you have, the more stretch you're going to get in there. And if you go crazy with like the Terrio Magic or Best Press, and really you can take some of that stretch out by starching the Ever Loving Daylights out of it. But typically speaking, you're going to get a little bit of stretch. Every seam has a little bit of give to it. And as you saw, and I showed you the border there, there's a little bit of stretch to it. So what happens, you decide that it's time to, so you've got that little bit of stretch here on this. And all those stretches will happen at the seam. And if you have any bias cuts, they'll happen on the bias cuts. Now, what happens, and I'm sure this quilt has, because I am a very lazy, messy quilter, is if you look at that, when I attached this border here, this outer border, when I attach that to this, my pieced inner border, which is this part here, I just sewed it along. But what happens sometimes when you're sewing it, as you sew it, you're kind of pulling it tight, and it's stretching as you attach the border, that outer border. Now, what that's going to cause, now you're not going to see it on this quilt because that's a really thin outer border, so you're not going to really see this effect very much. What then happens, and I'm going to see if I can't angle that a little bit. And if the sound's not coming through, let me know. Like, put in the comments, because like I said, this is a different setup, and so I don't know if the sound is coming through all right. So what you're going to have as it sits flat on your quilt is, you ever see a quilt where you get like a big pucker like that on the edge? Like you've got this ginormous kind of pucker that's right there on the edge, and then it kind of fades as it gets to the middle of the quilt. Well, what causes that is that you stretched this border when you were putting it on. So the inside of the border is shorter than the outside. So this end here is actually shorter than that because as you stretched it, it started to you stretched it when you attached it, and then it shrank when you got done. So the inside of that strip is shorter than the outside. So what happens is you've got extra fabric on the outside that has nowhere to go. And so what that causes when it gets on the long arm and everything's sitting flat is you're going to see that that fabric has to be worked in, and you get like a pleat is usually the best way to work it in. Sometimes if it's not too bad, I can spread it out over the course of the pattern, and you'll get like little tiny ripples, but you won't get a big pleat. But that's that border problem is very, very common. It's not a common problem, but that's something that I run into a lot. And so sometimes when you get a quilt back, you get that little bit of a pleat in the side or a little bit of some wrinkly, and that's because you didn't attach your outer border is too long. So what happened is it stretched as you attached it, and then once it was done, the inside shrank, outside stayed long, and so you have that extra fabric, so it's not going to lay flat. The way to fix that, now this is if you're truly a hardcore quilter, not hardcore, this is the proper way to do it. I don't do it this way, and I know that I should, but I don't do it this way, but I also don't complain when I've got a little bit of wave in my borders, a little bit of wave. Dance. You got like a surfing tune for me, Eddie? For the waves? The waves in the border? Oh, come on. Oh. Okay, I thought we were going somewhere with that, but not. Okay, but you're going to get that little bit of wave. I know that it happens on some of my quilts. I don't care because I'm kind of careless like that. But if you're a perfectionist, be aware of that. The way to avoid that problem is you take 3 measurements. So say, as we look at this quilt, I want to put a strip across the top here. So the way I do it, because I'm lazy and I don't want to work that hard, is I take a strip and sew it on and then chop it off at the end. Problem with that is if I'm not careful when I'm feeding it through, I may stretch it a little bit and I'll get a wavy border. The proper way to do it is you actually take a measurement. You will measure from that end to this end over here. And you'll do that on this side. You'll do that same measurement down the middle. And you got to be careful that you're actually down the middle so you're not curved because it'll be longer if you're not straight. But straight down the middle, and you take that same measurement off of the other end. So you're going to have 3 measurements. Now, of those 3 measurements, you take the average of the 3. So I'm working off the top of my head here. Say the first one is 11 inches, the next one is 9 inches, and the third one is 10 inches. If you average that, that's why I use little numbers so my mind didn't have to work very hard. You average that, add all 3 together, that's 30, divide by 3, and you get what, Eddie? 30 divided by 3? 10. You get 10. So you would cut a strip that's 10 inches long because that's the average of your 3 measurements. And then you cut that to length and you attach it to there. Now, when you do that, what may happen is you get to the end, it's a little long or it's a little short. Then you take it off and restart. What you want to do is you want to make that average size, that has to fit. So if you're going to do it right, you actually pin it in place first so it goes where it's supposed to go. So that's to get proper borders. If you don't want borders that are wavy and you gotta have, and when I quilt it, I have to work pleats into it. Like I said, I can work some of it out, but not all the time. But to do it right, you take 3 measurements, average of 3 measurements, and that's the length of the border you're going to put on. Now, if you're too long, you'll get pleats. The opposite is true as well. The difference is if you're too short, because I've seen people that will cheat it short because they're like they don't want the wavy border, so they cheat it a little bit short. So you don't want to have that pleat. Let me get back over here. So you don't want that pleat to be in there. You don't like that. Like I said, it's often going to look like that because you'll have that extra fabric here. So you get the pleat, and it slowly disappears into the border. That tells you your border's too long. Now, if your border's too short, the opposite happens. You're going to have to somehow, and you'll usually see it at the corners. And this isn't a good example because I don't do this very often. And what will happen at the corners, and I don't know if the angle's right, but you can see that's supposed to be a corner there, I hope, if you can see that. Big, thumbs up if you see that that's a corner. What happens if you're too short on your borders in the corner, that's not a 90-degree angle. It ends up being squished a little bit. One side gets pulled in, so then it looks like this. I don't think you can really see it. Let me see if I do it from the side. But what happens is one side will get pulled in, so it's not perfectly squared. It looks a little, one side kind of comes in. And you can fix that by pulling this out, but then what you run into is you start to have to pull and distort this center more when that happens if you cheat it short. It's easier to make it look better if it comes short a lot of times from a quilting. It's easier to make if it's shorter rather than longer, you can use it's a little easier to work in, but you still have to kind of stretch it a little bit, and you could pop a seam trying to get it squared out. So you take those 3 measurements and away you go. Now, if you're a first-time quilter and you're watching this, you're probably getting freaked out at this point. Oh my gosh, it's got to be perfect. It doesn't. There's some room for error. Most quilters can work out a little bit. The worst case scenario I ever had, I believe it's Bonnie Hunter. Is it Bonnie Hunter that does all the cute little crazy triangle things? I think it's Bonnie Hunter. They're really ornate and super fancy, and everybody loves them. As a quilter, I hate them because there's so many pieces in them. Like there's a ton of pieces. And so it's stretchy all over the place, and there's all these bias cuts, and these people that have never quilted before or have done a few quilts, they love it. They make it because it was easy to make, but they put their borders on and they didn't do it right, and so it's stretchy and all over the place. So long story short, as I had a Bonnie Hunter quilt come in, and the lady thought it was going to be a show quilt, and I did the best I could for it. I ended up actually, when I took it off the machine, I ended up taking all the stitching of the borders out, removing the borders, and cutting out the excess, because when it was all said and done, she had an extra, there was 2 borders, the inner and the outer border. Between the 2 borders, I took a total of 18 inches out. That's how much extra fabric I had to cut out of those borders that she had sewn in there because she had stretched it as she attached them. And you can work out a little bit, like an inch or two, an inch or two over the length of a quilt, you can probably work out without, you can work it out and it won't look too awful. Half inch, quarter inch, easy enough to do. But 18 inches, there's some serious pleats you got to put in there to make that, to take up that extra fabric to keep the side square. So when you're watching this, you're thinking it's got to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. You got a little bit of margin of error, but just keep in mind that if you're too far out of whack and you stretched it too much, it's hard to bring it back and have it look right. And I have more than once peeled the quilting out of a border, fixed the border, and actually requilted it. It is doable. It is fixable. And the other awful part about this, okay, now that kind of brings us into the next section of the thing we want to talk about. And since I've got people watching and I haven't bored you all yet, and we're 17 minutes into this, any questions? Shoot at this point, because this is interactive. The whole point of doing this live is for you guys to ask me questions if you have any at this point. Oh, wow. What? If not, we'll continue, because we're going to get into the other bit of quilting is we're going to talk about things as it relates to quilting. So we'll continue. And just as a heads up, we're hitting the 17-minute mark, so we're probably going to go over our fabled 27 and a half minutes where my camera starts to act up. So if we black out here in about 10 minutes, we'll be right back. It's just going to be a quick glitch if we get to that point. So as you can see, well, let me over here. Ooh, look at that. So I've got this weird thing going on. This is the back, and this piece of cuddle here is actually the top of the quilt. This is actually part of a project of something I have to make for Sarah. I was hoping to have it done for Christmas, but I don't. It probably will be, but I'm not convinced yet. And you'll see the end of that when I get to that point. But I wanted to use this because it's a really good good contrast. You can see what's going on. Normally I would put cuddle on top. I put it on the back. But for here, that's the top of the quilt. That's the back. There's no batting in here. I didn't put any batting, simply to keep it simple. But in the normal circumstances, you have a layer of batting in here as well. But I'm not going to worry about that. First thing we want to talk about is the size of your quilt. I'm going to see if I can move this and not make you all like seasick, so we get a better angle. Look at that hairy Sasquatch arm. All right, so hopefully I can hold this steady enough. As you can see across the top, we've got that big long bar. That has to be the width of your quilt, because as you quilt, it's going to get rolled up on this bar. It's going to get rolled. So first thing, when you're preparing your quilt to be quilted, notice my back here is quite a bit bigger. You don't need to have your back this much bigger than your top. If you look there, I've got a good foot. Let me see if I zoom out. You can see over here is the quilt. I've got a good foot in here. You don't need that much at all. A good 6 inches is, more than enough. 6 inches on every side. 4 inches is, I wouldn't go much less than 4 inches on each side. It's more important that you have your space at the top. Yes, Lisa, we do have 2 machines at this point. Kind of a side note because I just saw that on the screen. I'm trying to do this one. So the more important thing is when you're cutting your back, be sure to give yourself an extra at least 4 inches on the top and the bottom. If it's only 3, I can work with that, but I like at least 4 because there's 2 reasons. First off, you're going to notice I have to have enough back to clip in the top here underneath that clip, so you lose an inch right there. And then, you know, I could put this tight up to the top, but I'm not going to. I'm going to give us a little bit of space so that my machine doesn't run into the top there. Now, the important thing about the top and the bottom, the reason that I like to have a good 3 or 4 inches at the top and the bottom is because as I begin to roll, I have no control over the length anymore. Once I start to roll, wherever I'm at is where I'm at. So if there's a little bit of shift, I'm going to lose it on the bottom. So that's important to keep that in mind. The important thing is to realize that if you're going to be tight on your back, don't skimp on the length, the top to the bottom, because like I said, what'll happen is as I start to roll the quilt, I no longer have control. Wherever it's at is where it's at. Once I start to quilt, that's where it's going to be. Now, if you're tight on your sides, left to right, because I have done quilts that if it's a 60-inch quilt, I have done it with 60.5 inches on the back, and it was all right. That is all right on the width. The reason being on the width is as I'm rolling, I can see the sides, so I can shift the top a little bit to keep it all within bounds. So if you're tight on the sides, I can work with that. It's not ideal, but it's doable. So when you're sizing your back, it's very important to have enough top and bottom. Width-wise, it's nice to have it. But if you're tight, we can make it work because I can watch it as I'm rolling. I can see this side as it's working its way up, and I can shift the quilt and keep it on the back as I'm going. But I can't do the length because once I start to roll, the length is set. So that's just important on back. Now that, like I said, that's going to depend on your quilter as well, because I know some quilters won't want to touch it if they don't have enough back on the side. And honestly, I can understand that because it is an extra level of pain in my butt, but we can work with it, and it's not the end of the world. And the other thing too is you can always trim it a little bit if you're not perfect. But talk to your local quilter about that. But generally speaking, you've got a little bit more room for error on the sides versus the top as far as cutting your back. Your batting, it's good to have at least 1 inch or 2 inches all the way around. Some people cut the batting straight with the top, and the problem you're going to have if the batting is the same size as the top is any shift in the top, you're going to be over the batting. Why do I have 2 machines, Lisa? Because it's Christmas, and I need to stay caught up. That's why I have 2 machines. Anyway, back to, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. My adult onset ADD, I guess. So if your batting is the same size as your top, any shift, you're going to lose batting on the side. So you want to give yourself at least a good rule of thumb is to have your back the same size as your batting the same size as your back. Keep in mind as well that if you're oversized, it's not the end of the world. Because, for example, if I was quilting this out, and if you look at this, look at that, you're getting an excellent shot of the concrete wall over there. But if you look at this, and you're all probably seasick at this point. So if I was going to actually quilt this right now, what I would do, and you'll notice that we've got a lot of extra space on the sides. What I would do, because I like to float my top as a quilter, which isn't always the case. But what happens is I can shift this top. So if my back is super huge, what I like to do is I will take the top and I will shift it, pull it, over about 3 inches off the side, so that when I trim the quilt up, you're going to get all of that other side back as scrap. So if you've got a back that's too big, it's all right. When you get it trimmed up, you get the rest back as scrap and you can use it for something else. So it's not the end of the world that your back's oversized. Same thing with your batting. I try to position quilt tops to get the most back from your scraps, because as someone who sews and quilts as well, I understand the value of scraps in your stash and all that stuff. So that's something to keep in mind, that don't skip on your back too much. Don't worry about that because you'll get that back. And again, going to vary depending on your quilter. So that's the back of the batting. The other thing to keep in mind, now this is the other problem that I run into when we start talking about wavy borders and unsquared quilts and all that. The process of quilting is we're going to start in this top corner. We're going to do a row over here. And it's going to come down and do a row back this way. It's going to do 1 row across, and then we're going to roll it. What happens if we're not straight? So if we put a row in here, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, and say I've got a pleat here. Well, after this first row, that first row, I'm going to pull that down and it's going to disappear. But it doesn't go away. It kind of gets shoved down the quilt. And what will happen is as you get closer to the bottom, any of that extra border, because you put your borders on, you got that wave, all that extra fabric and wave kind of gets pushed down to the bottom. And what will happen in your bottom left or your bottom right corner is where all of those measurements that are off come together, because it kind of amplifies as you roll, and you get that one spot where it all came together because I had to work out that 6 inches of extra slack finally reared its head further down the quilt. So what you'll notice a lot of times, if you've got a quilt that's really extremely generous with its borders and really wavy, the first couple rows will look really good, but all that did is force everything down. And as you get closer to the bottom, I have to start working that in. So that's why whenever you see, sometimes when you see a quilt, it looks fantastic, and as you get to the bottom, it's like, oh, there's a little bit of ripple on the sides. And I usually catch it about halfway down, and I'll kind of work it in so it's not going to come up and bite me in the ass all the way at the bottom. But that's one of the things to keep in mind, that imperfections, I might not see them when I start, and as I roll them, it's just going to keep going, and it all starts to show up near the bottom of the quilt because it all kind of it multiplies and gets dragged down to the bottom. All right. Now that I've bored you all with that, what else was I going to talk about? I think that was everything. Oh, you don't need to layer everything. I have people that'll come in with everything like all basted and pinned and all that. It's very nice. It's very thoughtful. But I'm just going to pull it apart and put the top on and the back on anyway, so you don't need to really waste your time with that. Have it pressed. That does help. Having it nice and pressed and ready to go is a good way to be. Any questions? Thoughts? Suggestions? That's pretty much all I wanted to cover today, actually. I actually got through it much quicker than I thought. I thought we were going to be in here a little bit longer. But just, prepping a quilt, give yourself plenty of back. Oh, bed sheets. That's what I wanted to talk about, is bed sheets. Because I see that a lot. And it's not the end of the world if you use bed sheets. I'm not saying that, oh my gosh, what kind of quilter I use bed sheets. Some people prefer it. It's cheaper. It's like, oh, look, I can pick up a bed sheet over at Big Lots for what, $2 and throw it on the back of a quilt. You can use them for backs. It's not the end of the world. It's not the best quality. Bed sheets are cheap. Bed sheets tend to be a different quality cotton. And one of the questions I always think is, like, if you put that kind of money into making a quilt top, spend some money, do the back right, do the batting right, because that's what you want to do. But you can use bed sheets, not the end of the world. What is my backlog, Lisa? My backlog is about 5 days at this point. Anything that, if it came in today, it's probably going to be ready to go on Wednesday of next week. So I'm about 5 day turnaround. I might be down to 4, but I'm saying 5 to stay out of trouble. Other questions? Oh, other thing. If you do have wavy borders and they're all over the map, little thing to keep in mind is if you get a high loft batting, you can cheat a little bit. Because high loft batting will make your quilt a little bit puffier, and that puff gives you some space to hide that extra fabric. So that's a way to cheat a little bit, is to do a high loft like a Dream Puff poly high loft poly, which is the Dream Puff, or even the wool gives a little bit more loft, and so that loft will take up a little bit of space in your quilt. Also, when you're considering that, the a high loft batting will kind of shrink your quilt size a little bit, because you've got to figure that puff has to get the fabric from somewhere, so it may come in a little bit, so you will lose a little bit of shrinkage, a little bit of your quilt dimension with a higher loft batting. Other things. Okay, hold on one quick sec. Let me do a camera reset, because that way we won't be surprised by it. And I think that should do it. Maybe. Hopefully that does it. I'm hoping that fixed it. Okay. The other thing, when it comes to, what was I talking about, batting? High loft batting, low loft batting, my mind just went blank on. Oh, other thing, pre-washing. While we're here talking about stuff, I'm gonna let you in on a heresy of mine. I never pre-wash. If you wait to pre-wash till after your quilt is quilted, wait to wash your quilt the first time till after it's quilted. What's really nice is all that shrinkage. You'll get a little bit of shrinkage, not much, but everything, it'll tighten up your stitches and kind of give it that old antique look right out of the gate. So after you have it, don't pre-wash anything, and then after you get it quilted, throw it in the washing machine or however you wash your quilts. I know people do bathtubs. There's all sorts of. I'm one of those. Throw it in the washing machine, hang dry it. I'm sure there's other YouTube videos or how-tos about that, and I'm not sure that's probably the best advice for some people. But hey, that's how I do it. But wait till after it's been quilted to wash it. All the stitches tighten up a little bit, and it kind of gives it that antique look without having to wait 50 years. So that's my feelings on washing, and I know that somebody out there is going to watch this and then think, oh my gosh, you don't pre-wash. And I'm not saying never pre-wash, because if you're doing like hand dyes, there is some stuff that you are going to want to put like a color catcher in there and take care of it. But most quality cotton, I'm going to say all quality cottons, anything we sell here, you shouldn't have to pre-wash. I'm going to say that, and somebody's going to come in with like pink underwear that they washed with their red, and they're going to be like, I didn't pre-wash it. Look what happened to my quilt. But you shouldn't have to. With the dyes and stuff in this day and age, it's quality stuff. You shouldn't run into any problems, and just wash it all once when it's done. That's my heresy on washing quilts. So anyway, we're at a half hour. I think Eddie needs to get food in him because we skipped dinner because I was running so late today, and it's getting kind of late. And and for all of you, shout out to, I don't know if Anne's watching because The Mandalorian's on tonight. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about Baby Yoda because I can't watch it until Sunday because Sarah's working tonight. So don't tell me about it. All that being said, if there's no questions, I'm not. Oh wow, my hair is fantastic. Look at that. Oh, that's some fantastic stuff. So, like I said, just to recap, quick thing: Shop Christmas Party is going to be December 21st, and we have the tea towel aprons coming up next Friday, and then we'll also have the tea time. The Tea Time I Need a Good event is coming up April 28th. We will be adding some stuff to the calendar. Thank you all for watching, for putting up with me and my craziness. Feel free to call or shoot me an email or any of that with any questions related to quilting. Hopefully this all helps you all to understand a little bit of the process so you can prep your quilts a little bit better. I'm pretty easygoing. You bring it in, I'll quilt it. I'm not a hardcore quilter. I'm not hardcore like that. But like I said, if you have somebody else you're using for a quilter, some of that stuff you may want to double check, like backs and stuff. So all that being said, Merry Christmas. Thank you for watching. And, tell your friends about this craziness, trying to build their audience. I don't know why. Sometimes I think, I watch YouTube videos, I look at the production quality of these other shows, and I think to myself, maybe I should actually edit these and make them nice. But then I'm like, do I want to work that hard? But I suppose if you're all watching, I should do that for you. But the idea is the live stream. So, watch a slide, and then I don't have to worry about editing. Thanks for watching, and we will have a good night. And have a Merry Christmas if we don't see you. But we should be having one more. Maybe we'll have a special live stream Christmas one in a couple weeks. What is it in a couple weeks? That is the 20th?
Yeah.
The 20th. Oh, maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe we'll do, remember how this started? All of you that have been with us for the long time, since the inception, that it was like this weird live online auction thing that we were doing, like selling stuff. Maybe in our Christmas special, it's going to go back to the old buy it thing. Because I think I should have my producer here. Rio should be back from college, so we should be able to make that work. And then the question is, do we do it Facebook or do we do it YouTube? Anyway, the 20th, tune in because we're going to do a special Christmas whatever. So tell your friends about it and get like subscribers and stuff to make us famous. All that being said, I'm rambling now, so thanks for watching, and we will see you all later.